Good morning, afternoon, evening. Welcome to our state and local government community call for Power BI customers in GCC. Today's session is going to focus on security for Power BI. So typically we talk about Power BI in the context of reporting and analytics, but we also wanted to make sure that folks are aware of all the security features that overlay using our Purview platform. So today I have my counterparts, and they will be presenting and moderating the Q&A. So if you have questions along the way, we will have folks that will be able to answer those. Without further ado, I'll introduce you to Bibi, and she will be presenting on this topic today.
Thank you so much, Cyrus. Hi, everyone. Today we have Power BI community members as well as we have SLG Purview community webinar members on the call. We have talked about data protection features for your emails, files, and SharePoint sites previously for our SLG community webinar members. In today's session, we will be discussing security features and data protection capabilities specifically for Power BI. In today's data-driven world, organizations rely heavily on Power BI to transform raw data into actionable insights. And as Power BI becomes more deeply integrated into business decision making, the volume and sensitivity of data flowing through various dashboards, reports, and data sets continues to grow. Now, this evolution brings with it a critical challenge: how to ensure that data remains secure, governed, and compliant with both internal policies and external regulations. Microsoft addresses these challenges by offering a unified platform for data governance, security, and compliance, which enhances the visibility, classification, and control across the entire data estate, including Power BI. There are various features designed to safeguard Power BI reports, data, and services from accidental leaks or breaches. Now, here are the three key components of Power BI data protection and security. We have Microsoft Purview's information protection capabilities, which include classifying, labeling, and protecting your organizational data, including the sensitive Power BI data, no matter where it lives or travels. We also have Microsoft Purview's data loss prevention capabilities that reduces the risk of sensitive business data leakage from Power BI. And then we have Microsoft's security features that facilitate monitoring the access to Power BI and conducting real-time risk analysis of user activities within Power BI. I'm going to talk about each of these capabilities in detail in today's session. First, let's talk about the information protection capabilities in Power BI. Now, the key building blocks for classifying and protecting data are referred to as sensitivity labels. And these sensitivity labels are a part of Microsoft Purview Information Protection Framework. And these labels work across apps, services, to secure your data as it moves within and outside your organization. These sensitivity labels are centrally defined in the Microsoft Purview portal, and it can be applied to Microsoft Office files, to emails, to Power BI service and Power BI desktop files, to Microsoft 365 groups, teams, SharePoint sites, and also to schematized data assets that are registered in the Microsoft Purview data map. Your users can manually apply these labels to content, or you can also automatically classify and protect emails and supported Office files. Now, the first step in information protection is to create sensitivity labels within your Purview portal. You can assign only one sensitivity label at a time to your files, to emails, or to your Power BI data sets or Power BI desktop files. Now, a sensitivity label serves the purpose of classifying the content. For example, labels can be defined such as public, general, confidential, or highly confidential. And these labels will help your users understand how to handle the content appropriately by providing them user education and awareness. Labels can also enforce protection policies, and they can be included in data loss prevention policies as well. So, for example, a general label may only add a header to the content, whereas a highly confidential label may add a header, footer, watermark, and rights management to provide access only to authorized individuals. Additionally, DLP policies can be created to prevent sharing highly confidential documents outside the organization. One thing to note is information protection and data loss prevention are extensive organization-wide initiatives that extend way beyond the scope of Power BI alone. It is not feasible to define sensitivity labels for using exclusively in Power BI. Therefore, your planning process must take into account a broader range of usage scenarios so that you can establish labels that are applicable in multiple contexts. Also, it is advisable to involve several cross-functional teams in your data classification and labeling planning as well as deployment. Now, typically, if you manage Power BI for your organization, you will not be directly responsible for most aspects of information protection and DLP because these responsibilities will likely be assigned to the information security team or other IT or system administrators. So let us explore how your organization's global admin or compliance administrator can start creating sensitivity labels. So right now, I am inside the Microsoft Purview portal. This is a tenant in the Microsoft Government Community Cloud or GCC tenant. If I go to the Solutions tab here, I can see various features to secure, govern, and manage risks and compliance of your organizational data. To create sensitivity labels, let's go to the Information Protection portal. So then let's go to Sensitivity Label section. Now this is where you can create sensitivity labels for your organization and then publish the labeling policies to various users inside your tenant. Now I have created some sample labels already here like public, general, confidential, and highly confidential labels. Now some of these labels like confidential and highly confidential are parent labels. And under those parent labels, you can see the child labels. These child labels may apply different permissions to different set of users. They may have different scope of locations. And also these labels may be specifically targeted for a selected government agency as well. So for example, when a user applies highly confidential all employees label to files or emails, all employees in the organization will have access to the content, but external users cannot access that content. And then when a user applies the highly confidential specific people label to the content, they can decide which specific users will have access to that labeled content. Then when the label highly confidential DOH is applied to the content, then only employees of Department of Health or DOH agency will be able to access that content. Okay, other users within the same tenant will not be able to access the content. Now, this is a structure that I have created for my test environment. Of course, every customer is different, and you can create the labeling structure that meets the requirements of your government organization. So let's walk through the process of creating a sensitivity label. Let's give this label a name and then provide the description. I will call this label as highly confidential DOH only, and this sensitivity label name will be visible to your users within their items as well as in their files. Here you can define the scope for this label. So example, you can apply the labels to files, to emails. You can extend that to meetings as well as groups and SharePoint sites. As you can see here, there is no Power BI option. When you select this files option here, The sensitivity labels will be available within files that are created in Word, Excel, PowerPoint, as well as in Power BI. You can then choose if this label will control who can access and view the labeled content. You can also choose if this label applies any content markings like headers, footers, or watermark to various labeled items. Here we can define the encryption capabilities to control who can access the labeled items. Typically, lower order labels like general or public will not have any encryption settings. Encryption is usually applied to only higher level labels like confidential or highly confidential. And only authorized users that are listed here will be able to open, decrypt, and read a protected file, including a Power BI desktop file. Now, encryption will remain with a protected file even when that file is sent outside the organization or even if it is renamed. So in this example, when the highly confidential DOH only label is applied to content, only the DOH employee specified over here, defined over here, will have access to that content. Now this is where you can define the content marking settings for labeled office files and mails. For example, I can define the header, footer, or watermarks that can get applied to the office files or emails. Now, while these sensitivity labels can be manually applied to your files, you can also automate the application of sensitivity labels to supported files. So, example, when your users edit Office files or they compose replies or forwards for emails from Outlook, and if the content matches conditions that you have defined here, then the label and protection will automatically apply to the content. Okay, so example, if there's an Excel sheet that contains credit card numbers or social security numbers, and the user who is in scope of this policy is working in that Excel file, it automatically applies the highly confidential DOH label on that Excel file and applies protection settings defined in that label as well. And then if that Excel file is then referenced in Power BI, you will see that there will be upstream inheritance and the Power BI also will get the same label as that of the data source that you're working on. Okay, so these labels will basically travel into different paths from Office files to the referenced Power BI. And even when you export the files from Power BI, those labels will still be preserved. All right, so let's save this label. Then next, the labels have to be published for specific users, so it's visible to them and they can start applying them to their Office files or their Power BI, PBIX files. So let's click on Publish Labels. You can select the labels that you want to publish to your end users. And I'm publishing this label only to the employees in a specific agency. I will use the admin unit functionality for this. This admin unit functionality is created in Microsoft Entra ID and it restricts the policy to a specific set of users or groups. And it's extremely beneficial for governments who have different agencies and want to create agency-specific policies in their environment. Now, this policy will be published to all the users in the DOH agency. While publishing the policy, it will ask you if you want to enforce any mandatory sensitivity labels to emails, to documents, as well as to Power BI content. Now, if you enable this feature here, users will be required to apply labels to any unlabeled content that they create or edit in Power BI. Okay, it's a mandatory labeling capability. You can also configure default sensitivity labels to your documents, emails, meetings, or even Power BI files. So you can have different default labels for documents versus for emails. Example, your emails in the organization may have a default of general label, while all the other documents that are created in your organization may have a confidential all employee label by default. And this is where you can choose default label to Power BI content. Okay, so example, if an employee from a specific agency is creating a Power BI report, then the report can get a default label that you choose from here, such that only that specific users from that agency can access that content. Of course, the user can manually downgrade the label at any time if required. All right, I'm now going to publish this policy. So the policy has been created here. Now, in order to apply the sensitivity labels that we just created to Power BI files, there are also some additional settings in Power BI admin portal that we need to enable. So we'll take a look at those. So let's go to the Power BI Admin Center tenant settings. And here there are a few information protection settings that you need to enable. So you can expand this, allow users to apply sensitivity labels for content and toggle this to enable. Okay. Here you can also define who can apply and change sensitivity labels on Power BI content. If you select this option here, then you can enable everyone in the organization to be able to apply and change labels on items. Or if you select specific security groups, you can allow this capability for only certain users in your environment. There are also settings here to enable Power BI to inherit labels from various data sources. After enabling this feature, your Power BI semantic models that connect to sensitivity label data in supported data sources can inherit those labels so that the data remains classified and secure even when you bring it into Power BI. Then there are also settings here to enable automatically applying sensitivity labels to downstream content. With this setting enabled, whenever a sensitivity label is changed or applied to Power BI content, the label will also be automatically applied to its eligible downstream content. This downstream inheritance will help ensure that sensitive data remains protected throughout its journey, right from data source to point of consumption in Power BI. And enabling this feature will fully automate the downstream inheritance. Now, if this feature is not enabled, and if a user applies a sensitivity label to a semantic model or report, they can manually choose whether to apply the label to its downstream content or not. All right, so I showed you how the administrators can create the labels. Now let's see how the end user experience looks like when it comes to sensitivity labeling in Power BI. Your users can apply sensitivity labels in Power BI service as well as Power BI desktop. In the Power BI service, sensitivity labels can be applied to semantic models, to reports, to dashboards, as well as to data flows. Here you can see how to apply the sensitivity in a report or on a okay. Go to your Power BI report in the Power BI service, click on settings, and then select the sensitivity label from this dropdown. You can also set the sensitivity label on a semantic model or data flow. When you select settings of the semantic model or data flow, it will show you the same sensitivity label dropdown with all the labels available for you. And then you can select these labels and apply it to the model or the data flow. Power BI semantic models can inherit sensitivity labels from supported data sources, and this will ensure that data remains classified and secure when it is imported into Power BI. There are some supported data sources listed here. So example, supported data sources are Excel files on OneDrive or SharePoint online sites, then Azure Synapse Analytics, Azure SQL databases. And Power BI automatically applies the label to the semantic model when connected to the data source, and inheritance will occur during the model refresh. Please note that inheritance is only supported for import data mode. Any live connection and direct query mode is not supported. Let's see the label inheritance in Power BI from an Excel file that is stored in SharePoint. So you can see that this is an Excel file with sensitive data. Like example, there's social security numbers. There's also credit card numbers column over here. So clearly this is a sensitive file. Now my end user Megan can manually apply the sensitivity label to this Excel to protect the data. Okay, she selects this highly confidential DOH only label. Or if the organization has created auto labeling policies, it can automatically apply the same label on the file. And then Megan doesn't have to manually apply that. And once the label is applied, the protection settings are also enabled on this Excel file. Now, Megan has saved this file in her SharePoint site. You can see that this sensitivity label got applied on the file here. Now, Megan will build a Power BI report by referencing that Excel file that she just created. So let's click on a blank report in the Power BI desktop. And in Power BI desktop, we can connect that Excel file using the web connector. Please note that sensitivity label inheritance from an Excel file is supported for Excel files stored on OneDrive or SharePoint Online. Inheritance from data sources is not supported in connections via gateways or Azure Virtual Network. This means that inheritance from an Excel file that is located on a local machine will not work because this requires a gateway. All right, so I'm going to now provide the SharePoint URL path of the Excel spreadsheet that I created. Then click on Connect. And I have now created a report from that Excel data source. And you can see that this report automatically inherited the same label from the data source in the Excel. In Power BI Desktop, when you connect to the data source via the Get Data option, the Power BI will inherit the label and automatically apply it to this PBIX file. It applies it to both the semantic model as well as the report. And if the data source has sensitivity labels of different degrees, then the most restrictive option will be chosen for inheritance. Now this is Megan, and if she sends this PBIX file to someone in another agency or outside the organization, they will not be able to open this PBIX file, even if it is not yet published. In Power BI Desktop, sensitivity labels with encryption settings will affect the access to content. All right, now let's publish this PBIX file. When you publish the PBIX file to the Power BI service from the desktop, or when you upload a PBIX file to the Power BI service directly, the PBIX file's label will be applied to both the report and the semantic model that are created in the service. Okay, so you can see the same label from that Excel file from the desktop got applied to the report as well as semantic model in the Power BI service. When you download the PBIX file from the Power BI service by using this download the file option, the label will be preserved on the PBIX file. And if both the report and semantic model to download have two different labels, then the label applied to the PBIX file will be the most restrictive of the two. Okay, so we saw how you can apply labels in Power BI service. Now let me show you how sensitivity labels can be manually applied in Power BI desktop. To apply the label, go to the sensitivity icon here in the Power BI desktop, and then you can select the label. After you apply the sensitivity label, it will be visible in the status bar here. When you save your work in Power BI desktop, the sensitivity label is applied to the resulting PBIX file. And if the label has encryption settings, then this file will be protected wherever it goes and however it is transmitted. Only the users with necessary rights will be able to open it. Again, when you publish this file or when you upload this PBIX file to Power BI service, the label will travel with the data into the Power BI service. So I showed you how Power BI inherits label from data sources. Now let me show you how Power BI provides downstream inheritance of labels. When a sensitivity label is applied to a semantic model or report in Power BI service, it can automatically be applied to content that is derived from that model or report. This feature is referred to as downstream inheritance. So in this example, you can see the downstream inheritance that is illustrated using a lineage view. Let's say when a label is applied to the semantic model called customer profitability, this label filters down and gets applied to the reports and dashboards that are built using that semantic model. And then you can also fully automate the downstream inheritance or enable downstream inheritance with user consent. I previously showed you how you can configure those settings in the Power BI Admin Center. Then next, when labeled data leaves Power BI via export to Excel or export to PowerPoint, PDF or PBIX files, or via supported export scenarios like analyze in Excel or live connection or pivot tables in Excel, Power BI automatically applies the sensitivity label to the exported file. and then it protects it according to the label's file encryption settings. So again, this way your sensitive data can remain protected even when it is exported and leaves Power BI. So in this example, you can see there's a Power BI report with highly confidential internal only label. And this user who has access to this report exports data from this report to Excel. So he's exporting it to the Excel format. You can now see that the exported Excel has the same label as that of the Power BI report. And then a user who exports a file from Power BI has permissions to access and edit that file according to the sensitivity label settings on it. Okay. Sensitivity labels that you apply to content will persist and roam with the content as it is being used and shared throughout Power BI. One thing to note here is sensitivity labels and protection will not be applied when data is exported to CSV file format or any other unsupported export path. Okay, so it's only for supported export paths. When new reports and dashboards are created in Power BI service, they will automatically inherit the sensitivity labels that previously applied on the parent semantic model or report. So example, here I am creating a new report. It's a Power BI report, which will be based on a data set, which is highly confidential sensitivity label. Now the semantic model sensitivity label is automatically applied on the new report as well. Sensitivity labels can also be viewed on reports and dashboards in Power BI mobile app. So an icon near the name of the report or dashboard will indicate that it has a sensitivity label. And then the type of the label and its description can be found in the report or dashboard's information box. So we saw how sensitive data remains protected throughout its usage in Power BI from the source to the point of consumption. Organizations also need data loss prevention to reduce data leakage along with sensitivity labels. Okay. Microsoft Purview DLP will help prevent accidental or intentional sharing of sensitive data across various apps, services, and devices. And DLP policies can detect sensitive information types as well as it can detect the sensitivity labels on the content, and it can then prevent data loss. You can apply Purview DLP policies to various locations like Exchange, SharePoint, OneDrive for Business, Teams, Power BI, Microsoft 365 Copilot. You can apply the DLP policies to endpoints, to on-prem file shares, and also to third-party SaaS apps. And each of these locations offer different actions to prevent data loss. Now, our cloud-native DLP doesn't require any agents or endpoints. And I'm going to focus today specifically on Power BI DLP because we are talking about Power BI. We have done some sessions previously on DLP for all these different locations. Using DLP policies in Power BI will enhance security and it will decrease the risk of unauthorized sensitive information upload. And DLP policies will help you automatically detect sensitive data in your Power BI tenant. And you can also take remediation actions so that you can comply with various regulations like HIPAA or NIST 853 or CCPA, CGIS, and so on. Now, just like sensitivity labeling, DLP is also an organization-wide undertaking. So its scope and impact is far greater than Power BI alone, and it's typically created by the security or the IT team. I'll be now showing you how your IT or security teams can create DLP policies for Power BI in the Purview portal. So in the Purview portal, go to data loss prevention, and under policies, you can create a new DLP policy. There are some out-of-the-box DLP policy templates available here, like medical, privacy, financial templates. And these templates can be quickly used to get started with HIPAA and US privacy regulations, etc. for various locations. Unfortunately, these templates are not available yet for Power BI. But yeah, when you're creating a DLP policy for Power BI, you can choose this custom option, and then it will provide you all the different sensitive information types that are available that you can pick and choose for a variety of regulations in your environment. So give this DLP policy a name. I'm going to skip this section because admin units are not supported for Power BI DLP. You can apply the policy to Power BI workspaces. So here you can choose to include or exclude specific workspaces. If you select Power BI workspace, then all the other locations will be disabled because Power BI DLP policies only support Power BI workspace location and not any other location. And then DLP supports scanning data sets that have been published to a premium workspace. By default, this DLP policy will scan all the premium workspaces. Here we have to define the rules that specify conditions and actions of this DLP policy. So in this rule, you specify the conditions such as which sensitivity labels or which sensitive information types that you want to detect. Power BI DLP currently only supports sensitive information types. Other Purview classifiers like AI-based trainable classifiers or exact data match classifiers are not yet supported in Power BI DLP. In this specific example, I am detecting conditions like identifying social security numbers, credit card numbers, and so on. And in the same DLP rule, we can also specify actions that this policy will take when the matching condition is found. Example, I can block access for everyone other than the data owners, or I can block access to people outside the organization and allow access to only members of the organization. When setting DLP policies on Power BI Workspace, you can also notify your end users with policy tips if the sensitive data is found. And then email alerts can be sent to administrators and users. And administrators can monitor and manage alerts in the Alerts tab in the Purview portal. Now, to make the policy less restrictive, your users can override the policy tip with the business justification. You can also automatically override the rule if the user reports false positives, and all override actions done by the users will be logged for reporting. You can also configure incident reports for DLP matches, and you can assign severity levels for alerts as well. Okay, so we have created this rule. Now let's turn on the DLP policy immediately. So the policy has been created in the DLP portal. Now, if there's a policy match, alerts will be generated and administrators can check the alerts. So if you go to the Purview DLP portal, there is an activity explorer, which shows you if there are any DLP policy rule matches for Power BI location or even other locations. So here you can see additional details like which DLP rule matched, what was the rule action, which user violated this DLP policy, and which rule was triggered, what sensitive information was detected, and so on. And if a user overrides any DLP policy tip, you can also track those as well in this activity explorer. So example, it looks like Megan overrode the DLP policy tip for Power BI report, and the justification she gave was she wants to share that with her partners. So even that justification can be tracked from here. And if alerts are set up, then administrators can monitor and manage the alerts in the Alerts tab here in the DLP portal. Here you can see additional details about this alert. You can see that which user triggered this DLP policy alert, what was the DLP policy that matched this alert. You can see further details like the workspace name that triggered this alert, and if there was any sensitivity label on that content, on that report, and so on. And then your SecOps team can assign these alerts and take actions on them. These DLP alerts can be integrated with your SIEM solution as well if you are looking for a single pane of glass view for your SecOps team to investigate. All right, I showed you the administrator experience. Now let me show you the end user experience of DLP in Power BI. I have an Excel spreadsheet here that contains sensitive information like credit card numbers, social security numbers, etc. Now my end user Megan created a new Power BI report from the Excel data source. You can see that this user has not labeled the data source, nor this person has labeled this Power BI report. Now they publish this report to the Power BI service. Now, semantic model is evaluated against DLP policies whenever one of the events like publish, republish, or on-demand refresh or scheduled refresh will occur. And you can see that when a Power BI report or semantic model dataset you own violates a DLP policy, you will see this violation warning icon here on the dataset in the workspace list view. And if a user notification is enabled in the policy, this item will be marked with an icon, and this indicates that a DLP policy has detected an issue with the item. You can see the policy tip here clearly says sensitive information was found. Example, credit card numbers were detected, and hence access on this report is restricted. And as per the DLP policy we created, we have blocked sharing this report with external users. If required, the user can report an issue from here or can also override this policy tip. And after overriding the policy, the user can provide a business justification. And all these actions that the user is performing can be tracked or logged in the audit logs. I showed you already how this looks like from an administrator's perspective. Now, this is a Power BI report that contains sensitive information, and you can see that same policy tip notification here as well. If I try to share this report to external users, it gives me a DLP notification that I cannot share that with external users. And if I want, I can share that with the internal users in the tenant. So example, I'm sharing this report with Joni, who is part of the same tenant as Megan, and it does not give her the DLP warning notification. Okay, so we demonstrated the use of Purview DLP for Power BI premium workspaces. Microsoft Defender for Cloud Apps can provide DLP for Power BI without needing a premium workspace. Okay, so it's recommended you use both Power BI DLP and Defender for Cloud Apps to maximize the effectiveness. Now, Power BI is among many applications and services that can integrate with Defender for Cloud Apps. With Defender for Cloud Apps, it is possible to detect and control risky Power BI sessions in real time, and it can reduce the chance of damage that could be caused by any malicious actor. In Defender for Cloud Apps, you can create various policies to monitor user activities and also enable governance actions. For example, real-time access policies can control sign-ins into cloud applications like Power BI service. And using session policies, you can monitor users' activities during their session, and then you can restrict certain actions. There are also activity policies available to monitor activities that are recorded in Power BI audit logs, and then you can enforce governance actions based on the user's behavior. Again, your IT and security teams will be creating these policies in Defender for Cloud Apps. To create the policies that I was talking about, especially the ones that where you want to monitor user activities in real time, you have to first set up conditional access policies and Entra ID, and then you can route the sessions used in Power BI through Defender for Cloud Apps. This is a one-time setup, and once you have done this, you will see the Power BI service listed here in the Defender for Cloud Apps portal. And instead of your users' requests and responses going directly through Power BI service, they will now go through a reverse proxy architecture of Defender for Cloud Apps, which will help to monitor Power BI user activity in real time. You can then create access policies in Defender for Cloud Apps portal that can prevent a user from signing into a cloud application like the Power BI service. You can block access for a user who isn't a member of a specific security group, or you can block users, if they're accessing Power BI from an unmanaged device, or if they're accessing Power BI service from outdated browsers or outdated operating systems, or maybe if they're trying to access it from a location where you don't have offices or users, or if they're accessing from unknown IP addresses. There are a lot of options available that you can choose from in order to block access to the Power BI service. So you can go to the Defender for Cloud Apps portal, and under policy management, you can create an access policy. And here you can specify the activities matching various conditions in real time. Okay, so example, if someone is accessing Power BI service from an outdated browser or suspicious location, I can take actions like block them from accessing Power BI service. And this is how the end user experience is going to look like. So if they are accessing from any of these matching conditions, then they get a message saying access to Power BI is blocked. Now, access policies will allow or block access completely, but session policies could be useful where you want to monitor specific activities and take action in real time instead of completely blocking access to their Power BI service. So, example, you can block downloads and exports when a specific sensitivity label is assigned to the item in Power BI service. This is the most effective use case for real-time session controls with Power BI. You can also monitor sign-ins with specific conditions, or you can control file uploads within session policies as well. So again, to create session policies, go to Defender for Cloud Apps Policy Management and click on Session Policy. Here, I am blocking downloads from Power BI based in real-time inspection. Example, if the device is unmanaged or used from a country where there are no offices, and if someone is using Power BI to download files that have highly confidential sensitivity labels. Or you can also use inspection method, like if the Power BI the report consists of US social security numbers or credit card numbers, then you may want to block that specific download action. Okay. Additionally, you can also generate alerts for these scenarios as well. So this is how the end user experience will look like when you create those session policies. So when a user exports and downloads Power BI report to unmanaged devices, okay, so I'm exporting the data from here in the form of Excel, and you can see that it says the download was blocked. And this is a highly confidential labeled document as well. So we don't want users downloading all such documents or reports to unmanaged devices, and we can monitor that using session policies. Then apart from creating custom policies, Defender for Cloud Apps also provides two dedicated built-in detection policies for Power BI. So example, you have the suspicious Power BI sharing policy here, which detects and alerts when a user shares a sensitive report with an unfamiliar external email. And there's also this multiple Power BI report sharing policy as well, which helps detect and alert you when a user performs an unusual number of Power BI report sharing activities compared to the learned baseline in a single session. You can also send alerts or take governance actions if various anomalies are detected. You can investigate user activities in Power BI in the Power BI audit logs or even in the Cloud App Security Activity Log. So here there are some activity logs for Power BI. If I click on this, I can investigate further. This will give you a good understanding of how and by whom the Power BI content is being accessed or modified and so on. You can also create your own custom activity policies to alert on suspicious user activities in Power BI. And these are based on activities user has already performed. Okay, these activities are not going to be real time, but you will still be able to take some governance actions based on what the user has already performed or what activities have already occurred. So for this, you can go to the Defender for Cloud Apps portal and then create a new activity policy. There are several activity policy templates available here. You can pick and choose from these. You can create these policies based on a single activity or repeated activities performed by users. And then you can generate alerts or take specific governance actions, like, for example, suspend user sign in or confirm user compromised, require user to sign in again, and so on. All right. So apart from Defender for Cloud Apps, we also have capabilities such that administrators can use Power BI activity logs in the Purview portal so that they can find or like see the activities related to Power BI content. So here you will be able to audit more than 150 Power BI related audit logs in the Purview portal. And if you have audit premium, you can retain these audit logs for up to a year. The standard retention is 180 days, but with audit premium, you can increase the retention to up to a year. And all these Power BI audit logs can help you with forensic investigation as well as help you meet regulatory requirements as well. Next comes the licensing question. Most of you here may be curious on, what the licensing structure looks like for all the capabilities that we talked about. What I'm showing you here is the Power BI security licensing specifically for GCC tenants or government tenants. If you want to manually apply sensitivity labels to Power BI files, then your end users need Power BI Pro or Power BI Premium per user license. In addition to this, they also need either M365 G3 or AIPP2 or any G5 license SKUs that are listed over here. For DLP policies using Purview, the user needs Power BI Premium Capacity or Power BI Premium per user license. In addition to this, they also need any M365 G5 SKU like G5 IPNG or G5 compliance or the overall G5 licenses. For security monitoring using Defender for Cloud Apps, the session policies, access policies, and activity policies that I talked about, your end users will need one of the G5 licenses that are listed over here. If you want to retain the Power BI audit logs for a year, then you will need one of the G5 SKUs that are mentioned in this particular slide. Now, if you are in a commercial tenant, the licensing may be a little bit different because commercial tenants now have a new pay-as-you-go model for Fabric or Power BI DLP capabilities. Okay. All right, so we have come to the end of the session. If you want to inquire more about Purview or if you want to see a live demo of Purview capabilities, please send an email that is specified over here, msslgcompliance@microsoft.com. I have added some useful reference links on this slide related to Power BI security and data protection. And for our SLG community members, the Purview community members, our next session will be regarding guidance on CJIS compliance for state and local police and sheriff or law and enforcement agencies. One of our partners will be providing valuable insights on how they are helping customers be compliant with CJIS regulation. Now, thanks a lot for all of you for joining the session. I hope this session has provided you insights on how you can apply data protection and security to Power BI. If you have any questions, please put your questions in the chat window. We will be here for a few more minutes and we'll be monitoring the chat so that we can answer your questions.
Hey, thank you, Bibi. That was a great presentation. Looking forward to seeing if there's any questions out there. I have a couple questions, so I'm going to ask those while we're waiting to see if anyone else does. A lot of our customers are in large tenants that have multiple departments or agencies. Is there a way to delegate the ability for a single department to access and control their specific policy needs rather than having to rely on the internal IT staff to do those types of administrative tasks?
Yeah, we do have role-based access controls that are available in the Purview portal where these kind of policy delegation activities can be implemented. For various Microsoft files and other location deployments, you can also implement admin units such that individual agencies can create as well as manage their own policies, manage their own alerts as well. So definitely, this is a very common scenario in state and local government customers. Many of our customers are already implementing it. You can definitely do agency-wise, policy creation as well as management of alerts as well. Okay, administrative units will primarily help you with that. And of course, with the role-based access control, the individual agencies can create their own policies too.
Thank you. Very informative. One other question. You mentioned sensitivity label licensing manually apply. What licensing is required to automate the application of sensitivity labels?
Yeah, so for Power BI Desktop, currently you can manually apply the labels. The automation comes when you are applying the labels automatically to the data sources. So I showed you an example today where a user was creating an Excel file, right? And that file contained sensitive information. So there's automation capabilities available in Purview that can detect that and apply the labels to the data sources like Excel. And then when your Power BI consumes that content, or when that data source is consumed in the Power BI, the Power BI will inherit those labels in the reports. Okay. For automating the application of sensitivity labels to the Excel files and other, Office files, etc., you will require either GFI information protection and governance, or GFI compliance, or overall GFI licenses will also work.
All right, thank you.
And manually applying the labels is, by the way, available to customers with G3 licenses. Okay.
All right. Well, if while we're waiting for further questions, I see a couple in here. For our next community call for the Power BI folks, we haven't come up with the topic yet, but I have a couple things in mind. Hopefully, we'll have another community call the end of June, throwing around a couple ideas, and hopefully we'll have something posted here in the near future. I think there's a question for your next security presentation. I believe yours are always at the same time and day of the month, correct?
Yeah, it's usually on the last Thursday of the month, and our community members will get a meeting invite with all the details about the topic as well as the link to join the session.
I just want to thank you for doing this presentation. It's been very informative, and I'm looking forward for our customers to get informed about all of these security features that typically, as a technical specialist from the Power BI side of things, even I have questions, and I've learned quite a bit today. So thank you much. And
Thanks for having me, Cyrus, and thanks to all of you for attending the session. I hope it was valuable to you.
I'm also going to take the links that were presented in the PowerPoints, and I'll put them in my blog posting as well. Thanks everyone for attending, and have a great rest of the week.